Have you ever sat quietly after a phone call with your son or daughter, wondering why it felt a little colder than usual? Maybe they seemed distant. Maybe they cut the call short or haven't visited in a while, and you're left replaying the conversation in your head, trying to figure out what went wrong. If you've ever had that sinking feeling that something you said didn't land the way you meant it, you're not alone. The truth is, many older parents across the country feel like their adult children are pulling away. And often, it's not because of something big like a disagreement or falling out. It's something much smaller, something subtle, something as simple as a sentence. Today, we're talking about 7 common sentences, words spoken with love, habit, or worry, that can quietly chip away at the relationship you've worked so hard to build. And more importantly, we'll talk about how to turn those same moments into chances to bring your children closer, not push them away. Because even if the bond feels strained now, it's never too late to rebuild connection. Let me tell you about Linda. She's 72, lives in Ohio, and absolutely adores her daughter, Emily. They used to talk every weekend. But lately, those calls have slowed to once a month, sometimes even less. Linda couldn't understand it, until she remembered something she said during their last visit. "Emily, you look so tired. And have you gained a little weight?" She meant it out of concern, of course. She thought she was being observant, maybe even helpful. But what she didn't realize is how that sentence landed. Not on the surface, but deep down. To Linda, it was love. To Emily, it felt like judgment. Like she was being evaluated, not embraced. You see, commenting on your adult child's appearance, even gently, can send an unintended message that how they look matters more than who they are, that they're being watched, not accepted. And when you add that to all the pressure they're already under, from work, social media, parenting, you name it, it's just too much. Psychologists have found that when parents make appearance-based comments, even ones as simple as, "You look tired," it spikes stress levels in adult children and makes future visits feel emotionally risky. Not comforting. Not safe. Just more pressure to be perfect. So, what do you say instead? You greet them with warmth, with joy. Say, "I'm so happy to see you." Or, you light up the room. Tell them they're welcome, not watched. And if you really want to show concern, ask how they're feeling, not how they're looking. That tiny shift, that choice to focus on their soul rather than their surface, it opens doors that judgment quietly closes. Now let's talk about another phrase. One that slips out so naturally, especially when we're watching our kids struggle in ways we never had to. It sounds like this. "When I was your age, I never..." Maybe it ends with, "talked back to my parents," or "needed therapy," or "had trouble paying rent." It doesn't matter what comes next. The damage is already done. What feels like wisdom to you sounds like dismissal to them. Your children live in a completely different world than the one you grew up in. The cost of living, the speed of life, the weight of expectations, it's all shifted. Telling them that you did it better, faster, or stronger doesn't inspire them. It makes them feel small, like their struggles are imaginary, like they're just not trying hard enough. And that hurts, even if they don't show it. You might mean to say, "Period. I believe in you." But what they hear is, "You're not good enough." That's the power of comparison. It builds a wall, not a bridge. If you want to draw them in, if you want them to confide in you about their challenges, replace comparison with curiosity. Ask, "What's that like for you?" Or, "How are you holding up with everything on your plate?" Let them teach you about their world instead of reminding them about yours. They don't need another voice telling them they're falling short. They need someone who sees how hard they're trying. It's not about hiding your past or pretending life wasn't tough then too. It's about honoring the differences and choosing connection over competition. Your stories are valuable, but they're most powerful when shared with humility, not as proof of superiority. Now I want you to think about the last time you offered advice. Maybe your daughter mentioned her job and you said, "You should just find something else." Or maybe your son was talking about his kids and you said, "Why don't you just take their phone away?" These might seem like helpful suggestions, but to them, it can feel like control. Unsolicited advice, especially to someone who's already under pressure, often feels like a lack of trust, like you don't believe they can handle their own life. And over time, it creates emotional distance, fewer calls, shorter visits, conversations that stay on the surface. It's a natural instinct. We want to help. We've lived, we've learned, and we see patterns they may not. But being right isn't the same as being helpful. And offering advice too quickly can close the door to deeper sharing. So instead of jumping in with what they should do, try asking, "Do you want my thoughts on that?" Or, "Are you just needing someone to listen?" That one question, that simple pause, tells them, period. I see you. I respect you. I trust you. And you know what? When your kids feel seen, respected, and trusted, they start coming to you again. Not out of guilt or duty, but because they know you're a safe place. A listening ear, a steady presence. It's not about saying less, it's about saying better. Listening more. And choosing words that invite your children in instead of pushing them away without meaning to. So whether it's about their appearance, their life choices, or the way things were back in your day, the truth is, every sentence you say carries weight. And when those words come wrapped in unconditional love, wrapped in trust and respect, that's when healing begins. That's when relationships grow stronger. And if you've used these phrases before, please don't beat yourself up. You're not alone. You're human. And the fact that you're here, listening, trying, that says more about your love than any words ever could. Let's keep going. Because there are still a few more phrases that might be creating distance without you realizing it. And once you know what they are, you'll have the power to replace them with something far more powerful. Love, connection, and understanding. There's another sentence that might sound innocent on the surface, maybe even heartfelt. But underneath, it carries a heavy emotional load that your children may not know how to handle. It goes something like this: "I won't be around much longer." Or, "I'm getting old, you know." Now you might say that with a half smile and a shrug, not trying to make anyone feel bad, just being real about life, right? But here's the thing. When you say that to your adult children, it doesn't spark a rush of love and urgency the way you hope. More often, it sparks guilt, anxiety, even avoidance. Because instead of hearing, "Let's make the most of the time we have," they hear, "You're not doing enough. You're not here enough. And one day it'll be too late." And that's a heavy burden to carry, especially for someone who might already feel pulled in a dozen directions. Between work, kids, bills, and trying to keep themselves afloat, your adult children are constantly juggling. And when every call or visit comes laced with reminders of mortality, it makes those moments feel dark. Like every interaction comes with a ticking clock. You don't want your time together to feel like a countdown. You want it to feel like a gift. So instead of saying, "I might not be here much longer," try saying, "I really enjoy spending time with you." Or, "It means the world to me when we talk." That subtle shift, from guilt to gratitude, creates a space your children want to step into, not run from. And if you're feeling lonely or missing them, tell them honestly, but kindly. "I was thinking about you today. Just wanted to say I love you." That one sentence can do more to pull someone toward you than any guilt ever will. When your words come from a place of love, not fear, they build connection instead of pressure. And at the end of the day, that's what you're really after, isn't it? Not more time on the calendar, but more joy in the time you do have together. Now this next one might be the trickiest of all, because it comes from a place of pain, of longing, of disappointment. You've probably said it without even thinking, maybe during a quiet moment after weeks of silence. You never call anymore. Or, I guess you're too busy for me now. I know those words often come from a heart that feels forgotten, but to your kids, they don't land as a loving nudge. They land as a reminder that they're not enough. And when every time they do reach out gets met with guilt, they start to think, why bother? Instead of feeling welcomed, they feel like they've already failed before they've said hello. Here's the truth. Your adult kids are doing the best they can. And no matter how much they love you, their time is sliced thinner than it used to be. That doesn't mean you don't matter. It just means their world is chaotic in ways they rarely show. So what can you say instead? Try this. I'm so glad you called. Or, this just made my day. Let them know their presence, no matter how brief, means more than their absence. Because when you celebrate the moments you do get, they'll want to give you more of them. Every child, no matter how grown, wants to feel like they're making their parents proud, like their efforts count. When you lead with joy instead of judgment, it opens the door for connection. Every single time. Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something even deeper. Something that lives in the space between what's said and what's felt. Picture this. Your son brings his wife to dinner, and you smile politely, but later you say, I don't think she really likes me. Or maybe it's after a disagreement and you mutter, your husband always makes things more difficult. It might feel like you're just expressing your truth. But in that moment, you're putting your child in a tug of war. One where they can't win. Here's what most parents don't realize. When you criticize your child's partner, you're not just hurting their spouse, you're hurting them. Because that person is part of their identity now, part of their team. And when you attack that team, you force them to choose. And they'll choose their spouse. Every time. That doesn't mean they love you less. It means they're protecting the life they've built. And when you criticize someone they love, even in small ways, it puts cracks in your relationship. Cracks that get wider each time the tension comes up. Eventually, it's easier for them to stay away than to keep trying to hold both sides together. So what can you do? If you can't find something kind to say about their partner, stay neutral. Focus on shared interests, common ground, or simply on being present and pleasant. And if you see something you don't like, ask yourself, is this really my battle to fight? Or is this just a moment to show grace? Remember, your goal isn't to win the argument. It's to stay in the picture. Stay part of their life. And the more you show that you respect their choices, even if you don't understand them, the more likely they are to invite you in. Being a parent doesn't stop when your kids grow up. But it does change. It becomes less about guiding and more about grounding, being the safe space they come back to when life gets hard. The words we use either build that space or break it down. And even when your intentions are good, and I know they are, your words have to match the love behind them. Because at this stage of life, connection is the gift that matters most. And it's built day by day through compassion, respect, and the choice to see your children not as who they were, but who they are now. Now, there's one phrase that might surprise you with how much damage it causes. Not because it's loud or harsh, but because it sounds so noble on the surface. So full of love and sacrifice. It's when a parent says, I gave up everything for you. Maybe it slips out during a conversation about money, or when your kids make a life decision you don't agree with. Or maybe it just comes up when you're feeling hurt and unappreciated. But no matter the timing, those 7 words carry a heavy emotional price. Because what your children hear isn't, I love you. What they hear is, you owe me. That phrase, I sacrificed everything for you, turns parenting into a transaction. It frames the years of love and care and hard work not as a gift, but as a debt they're now expected to repay. And that creates guilt, pressure, resentment, sometimes even shame. But here's the hardest part. They didn't ask for that sacrifice. They were children. They didn't have a choice in what you gave up. Your job, your freedom, your dreams. And now, as adults, they don't want to feel like they're responsible for your happiness. They want to love you freely, not out of obligation. And I know this might sting, because if you're like most parents, you did give up a lot. You put their needs ahead of your own for decades. You missed vacations, changed careers, stayed in relationships, or moved across the country, all for them. And yes, you deserve to be honored for that. But if you use those sacrifices as leverage, even subtly, you don't build gratitude. You build distance. So how do you express what you gave without making your kids feel like they're carrying a bill they'll never be able to pay? You reframe the story. Instead of saying, "I gave up everything for you," try saying, "Being your parent has been the greatest part of my life." Instead of listing what you lost, share what you gained. Memories, pride, love, laughter. Tell them what it meant to be there, not what it cost to show up. When you do that, you're giving your children the gift of knowing they were and are deeply loved. No strings attached. You're also modeling something powerful, that love doesn't demand repayment. It just flows forward. Because one day, they'll be in your shoes, older, reflecting on the sacrifices they've made. And how you choose to talk about yours will shape how they carry theirs. Letting go of emotional debt is one of the kindest gifts you can give your adult children. It frees them to love you without fear of disappointing you, without feeling like they'll never measure up. And it opens space for something deeper than duty, genuine connection. So, we've talked about a lot. 7 sentences that, without meaning to, can make your adult kids pull away. They might seem harmless, even caring. But when you look deeper, you realize how they can chip away at closeness, moment by moment. You see, most broken relationships don't fall apart in one big fight. They unravel slowly, through everyday words that hurt in small, silent ways. Words that pile up over time, until there's a wall where there used to be a window. But the beauty is, if words can push someone away, words can also bring them back. And that starts with awareness, with humility, with love that's willing to change, even just a little. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present, in a new way, a softer way, a way that honors who your children are now, not who you wish they'd be, or who you remember them as. So, take a moment right now to think, which of these sentences have I said, even just once? Which ones felt like love when I said them, but might have felt like criticism when they heard them? If that question makes your heart sink, that's okay. It means you care. And caring is the first step to healing. You have more power than you think to change the tone of your relationship, to turn silence into connection, distance into closeness, tension into trust. All it takes is a few different words, spoken with the same love, but a little more wisdom. So next time your daughter visits, greet her with joy, not judgment. When your son calls, focus on what he did say, not how long it's been. When their life looks different from yours, ask about it instead of comparing. When you want to offer advice, ask if they want to hear it. And when you're feeling lonely, reach out with warmth, not guilt. It's never too late to change how you show love. In fact, the older we get, the more powerful that change becomes. Because it shows your children that growth doesn't stop at 40 or 60 or even 80. It shows them that you're still learning how to love them better. And that is a lesson they will never forget. So be proud of yourself for watching this video, for choosing self-awareness over defensiveness, for opening your heart, even when it's hard. If this video touched you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which sentence surprised you the most? Which one are you ready to change? Your story might be the one that helps another parent take that first brave step too. And if you found this helpful, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. We're building a community here, a space for growth, healing, and living well at every age. You belong here. So here's to choosing better words, to building bridges, to loving stronger, softer, and smarter than ever before. Here's to living your best life with the people you love, starting right now.